It turns out you didn't win the lottery. You've got 50 quid, $50 left in your pocket.
Oh no.
And you want to hear some music. Or what are you going to do?
Who you gonna call?
You're going to come and watch Alan Ross videos.
Hello.
Where he's actually done a $50, £50 shootout. This is it. So, this wasn't originally a £50 contender, but it is now because it came on the market about 90 quid, about $90. But they keep giving, they still advertise it as $90, not, well, 90 quid in the UK. I can't currently see it on sale at the moment, Amazon US. But they've got a 40 quid, they just have this permanent 40 quid off. It sounds fantastic. So basically, this appears now to be a £50, $50 speaker. All 4 speakers here are in that bracket, but of course, that's the biggest. Then there's a bigger one, and these are the 2 smaller ones that you kind of associate with this price level. We've all got something to offer. So at the end of the day, you don't your last 50 quid. The only thing you want to do is listen to some music. You ain't got a speaker, you're going to go out and buy a speaker. What are you going to do? So this video is coming at it from the perspective of the Tribit Xsound Mega. As we've already done these speakers before in a shootout, and hopefully you already know what to expect. But this, as I said, this was at 90 quid. This was almost twice the price level. It is bigger. This is just over 1 kilo compared to the Bogasing at about 3/4 of a kilo, 731 grams. Then we have the Soundcore Boost upgraded, I call it the version 2, at 624 grams. And then the little tiddler on the desk right now, the Tribit Maxsound Plus at 610 grams. So that's nearly twice the weight of these 2. But it is about price. So what can it do now it's at these price levels? Well, we already know it's a little bit of a bass monster for its price level, but maybe it's a one-trick pony. We got a single titanium woofer, that makes it mono. And the big miss on this speaker is you got a pair of them. Now you got stereo. No, you haven't, because it doesn't do TWS. You can only do party mode with multiple versions of this speaker. Well, what's that all about? They got almost everything right. And there's always that deal breaker at the end. So, only mono, even if you've got 2 of them. It's got triple sound modes. Wow, 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 wow. Oh, hang on a sec. There's an audio book mode that just is, you're not going to listen to music on that ever, of course. And then we got the music mode. Well, that's the mode, then I listen to music. No, that's the mode if you want to cut your bass. So really, the only mode we're interested in is X bass. They call it extra bass, but of course that's normal bass in anybody else's language. I'm going to turn it on. Do you know why I'm going to turn it on? Because it's got lights. So one of the great things about this, the only speaker on this table right now with lights is the Tribit Xsound Mega. So you can have a play with the EQ button if you want, but you're going to end up on X bass anyway. You can control the lights, different modes. You got your multifunction play, pause, and skip and all that, and then you got your volume up, volume down. You got your Bluetooth like your power light, and on the back, well, that's a shocker, isn't it? Why is it a shocker? Well, because a speaker that size, they've decided you deserve the best. Not only have you got an auxiliary in, yes, I said an auxiliary in, but you've got, you can charge 2 devices from here. It's a power bank that allows you to charge with USB-C A or USB-C. USB-C. Dumb. That's amazing. Where else do we see dual, the possibility of dual charging, if indeed you want to use this as a power bank? It's not without issues. What are those issues out? Well, it's kind of flat, 60 hertz to 3 kilohertz. There is a big dip at the 4 kilohertz mark, right in that presence region. We don't want to dip there, really. And then there's a big peak around 10 kilohertz, and indeed there's also a little dip, 400 hertz on 1 kilohertz. It's not, so it's kind of smooth, but they're not, and it's kind of a little bit too bass heavy, but it is impressive bass. You buy this for the bass, but it does make it sound a bit confusing. We'll get to that. And that's the whole point of this video. It allows you to listen to it, not just hear my voice. My £50, $50 champion is, of course, the Soundcore Boost version 2. They call it the upgraded version, because for the size, fantastic bass, you also get that fantastic true graphic equalizer in the app for Soundcore. You always say, well, third party, yes, third party, but you've got to remember, it's not, you risk doing First of all, layering EQ on EQ is not something I'm a fan on. That third party does not know where the peaks and dips are on this. I mean, certainly we're talking about peaks, and then you start boosting those peaks, you're gonna start causing issues, long-term issues with your speaker. When you get embedded EQ, and when it's truly embedded, not just an EQ in the app, when it's truly embedded into the firmware, and it's not layered EQ upon EQ, and it's already designed to work within the limits of the drivers. That's why I do it that way. That's why I only use it when it makes a difference, and it's embedded EQ. So, impressive bass for size and price. Impressively neutral, unusually neutral. The Tribit Maxsound Plus makes that a great listen for anyone, you know, just wants a neutral sounding speaker. I'm not going to say for audiophiles, because of course you don't get any of these speakers if you're an audiophile. You'd be knee deep in £40,000 worth of gear. A lot of people think they're audiophiles and they're not. But you can not, you know, you can say, oh, I don't like heavy bass, and that's fine. And you can like a neutral sound. That's your taste. Liking a neutral sound does not make you an audiophile. Then the Bogasing M4, multiple issues, but what you can get at the price level is decent dub of bass, more bass than you'd get on the other two. But we've now got the Challenger for that bass at the price level, and even got other things like lovely lights and all that. So let's get straight to it. We're going to do, well, straight in, Tribit Xsound Mega versus all three of these speakers, but one after the other.
You were right this time. Oh no. Now the truth comes out, and I know that you want me about it. Shallow. You were only ever in for yourself, yeah, in for yourself. Oh, great, fantastic, you mastered it all. I like you plastic, but that it's so long. Over your antics, you kept me alone. I hope that
Maxsound Mega versus the Bogasing M4. The M4 does do some weird things, notably this 2.5 kilohertz peak, then dropping off, and then another one around 11 kilohertz, whereas the original track is pretty flat all the way through. The Mega also has a big dip, 2.5 kilohertz to around 8 kilohertz, but it's certainly more off on the M4. But the M4 does have a decent dollop of bass, although they're neck and neck till 100 hertz, and then the Xsound Mega takes over. The Maxsound Plus of all four speakers is probably the flattest in terms of frequency response. It's closest to the original track. It actually can hold its own in that mid bass. It is losing out a bit in the upper bass, and then pretty flat from about 250 hertz and onwards. So the Mega, much stronger in the upper bass, then has its issues, has its big dip right in the presence region, and the Maxsound Plus therefore sounds so much clearer. The Soundcore Boost actually does best in the mid bass. It has a big pushed mid bass. It's only from about 70 hertz and below where that deep rumbling bass of the Xsound Mega takes over. But it does also dominate in the upper bass. Then they're pretty much neck and neck. Then we have that big dip for the Mega, which makes it sound a bit weird. So a bit stronger in that presence region for the Boost. But overall, the Xsound Mega is going to come off as sounding that much more powerful. But the Boost probably is the best trade-off here in terms of the smaller speakers between the bass of the M4 and the clarity of the Maxsound Plus.
So, Xsound Mega versus Bogasing M4. Well, that's an easy win, in my opinion, for the Xsound Mega. They're both on the larger size, so we're not going to start bringing into actual dimensions into the equation. It's being out-muscled. Yes, there's more upper bass, but that's because it's not doing as much deep bass as you can get, and that's what it's all about. You can get deeper bass on the Tribit Xsound Mega without so many of the trade-offs. The trade-offs here are, for a balanced sound, you've got to go into what they call the bass mode, which is actually the balance mode. It won't remember the last EQ, and it won't start up in that mode. It will start up in their default mode, which is not great at those volumes. It's going to get very messy. It's still messy, still liable to distort. I have a high threshold for distortion. I hear more of the speaker than distortion. If you're particularly sensitive to distortion, you're not going to like that at all. But for me, I pick out the music rather than distortion. At the time, before the Xsound Mega hit, that was about as good for me as you could get in terms of I just want to hear a bit more bass at the size and price. But it's a bit of a mess, the frequency response. Once it's being out-muscled for bass, there's not much left to say for that speaker. So then we've got the Xsound Mega versus the Maxsound Plus. Well, of course, major differences in size already. Major differences in tuning. I mean, that's mono for a start. That's stereo. It can't do the deep bass, but by comparison, it's very, very clear. You're going to hear a smoother sound. There is some bass there. It's just, that's all about deep, big bass. And that's more about just a nice neutral, more accurate sound. If you're all about, you want to reproduce what the sound engineer heard when he was sitting mixing it. And I'm not going to say what the original track sounded like, because it's all about what the sound engineer mixed it to sound like. And that, I guarantee, has got nothing to do with the original recording. Of course, they're trying to record something live. But in terms of studio recordings, let's get rid of this. Come on, please. Let's get this out of the way once and for all. It's nothing like the original. Let's get rid of the mics. Go inside that sound studio and listen to them, and then listen to the actual track. Not the same thing. So, nice neutral. You can get some idea of what the sound engineer was listening to, but of course you'd have to be in his room and listening on the monitors he was listening to actually reproduce that. But still, if you don't like, if you just don't like any boost, and look, I personally like a V shape. I like what they call the smiley shape. A nice boost at the low end, a boost at the highs. It does what it says on the box. It gives you a smiley face. It's about taste. If your taste is neutral, you're going to love the Maxsound Plus, even though there's loads of dollop of bass. It's about the fun factor versus the accuracy factor, or the clarity factor. I'm going to call that a draw because they're so different, not just in size, but in tuning. You're either going to like one or the other, depending on your taste, and not because one happens to sound better than the other. And then, of course, we got our current, our reigning, current world champion at the 50, not overall, not pound for pound champion, can only have £1 for pound at all weights, but at the $50 £50 mark. for its combination of size and impressive bass, and how you can tailor the sound using the Soundcore app. And by the way, I didn't mention, there's an app for the Tribit Xsound Mega. It will pick up, first of all, every time I start that app up. I mean, I know it's in beta phase, but come on, we should be past beta phase. It wants me to log in each and every, I mean, it's an absolute pain, the Tribit app. At least they're trying, I get it. But yeah, things about the privacy issues and stuff, I think I've said before, got to log in. Is it just me, or is it everybody else? So it picks up the Mega in the app, but all you can do is change the lights. The battery indicator doesn't work. Yes, you can go in and it says you can set EQs, but it doesn't work. You can't make any, it doesn't change the sound going in the app to try and change even the embedded modes. That is not working. Well, it's not working for me. Can't even tell me the firmware version. Amazingly, we've actually got more mid-bass on the Boost than we've got on the Xsound Mega. But it's at the cost of some upper bass and some deeper bass. We've also got recessed lower mids, and overall it sounds a little bit recessed against the Tribit Xsound Mega. But the Xsound Mega, by comparison, sounds a little congested. It's bass heavy. That bass is obscuring some of the rest of the frequency response, muddying it somewhat, simply because of how much bass there is there. I'm going to call this one a draw because they both have something going for them, obviously bass, but this is more of an all-rounder. And given its size, it bridges the gap between the clarity of the Maxsound Plus and the bass of the M4, but does more things right than the other two-speaker overall. But again, it's going to be taste. But for me, this is a draw because if they were the same price, I mean, it remains impressive, albeit it's a much bigger speaker, but you're getting a lot more for your money. In terms of the lights, people like their lights. It's a shame you can't do stereo pairing on a pair of them. But if you can handle the size and you want a bass weighty sound, you prefer that. Otherwise, you will be going for the Boost, or indeed one of the, well, I think we can put that to the side because we've now got more options. I mean, if they keep this price around 50 quid, it's taking the place of the M4 with even more bass and less of the distortion issues that you're going to get on the M4. So the only thing left is, what is the headroom? How loud do they go? Can you cause an earthquake to the people living down below to you? We're going to find out. We're going to do the maximum volume test.
So the Bogasing M4 is actually the loudest here. It's not the most pleasant, but it's the loudest. And why is it the loudest? It's that massive 2.5 kilohertz peak, along with retaining its bass from 200 hertz down. It's doing pretty well, but very, very V-shaped. The Maxsound Plus and the Soundcore Boost cannot compete in terms of bass now, but the Soundcore Boost is the easier on the ear, more bass in the Maxsound Plus, a bit more linear, where the Maxsound Plus now has a mids push, and actually from about 70 Hertz and down, there isn't that much in it between the Soundcore Boost and the bass of the Bogasing M4.
It does have the most bass at maximum volume than all 4 speakers, but it's also of the weakest. It has less going on at 3.3 to 5 kilohertz. So when you add those two things together, you get a congested sound. You're getting a muffled sound. There's no doubt about it. In terms of how purely loud they go, well, that's the M4. You've got to switch it back to default mode to get the volume, but then it's a screech fest. It's got that terrible peak around the 2.5 kilohertz mark. It's also a dip 300 hertz to about 2.5 kilohertz. It's just a mess. It's an assault on the eardrums, but hey ho, it will go the loudest if that's all that matters. For me, probably the best listen here, again, the best trade-off is indeed the Soundcore Boost. It doesn't have the most bass, it doesn't go the loudest, but it's probably the easiest one to listen to at those louder volumes. If we could get the actual EQ to start working in the app, that would probably transform the Xsound Mega, but it certainly doesn't work for me, and I'm not going to third party for reasons already mentioned. And that leaves us with the Tribit Xsound, with the Tribit Maxsound Plus, and well, it's just left wanting now. I mean, it's not for high volume listening. Not that any of them really are, but you can't push it too far because it does fall apart. It does become thin and brittle. So that's why, certainly at maximum volume, for me, that's probably the winner here. But in terms of most bass, it's the Mega. In terms of purely the loudest, it's the M4, but the easiest one to listen to, the Boost. And it is left wanting now, the Maxsound Plus, but it's not about the volume. So if you're indeed wanting to know what the actual specs are between them all, this is going to come as a shocker to you. They are all made in China. And I think we're over the price. Well, of course, it's the £50 battle. They are all around the $50 mark. And if they're costing more than that, if you can't get these deals, then obviously they're less value, and then it becomes less relevant. Remember, this is about the $50 mark. In terms of those batteries, 29.2 watt hours. The Mega is the largest, followed by the Bogasing M4, 24.4 watt hours. But then, of course, they are the biggest speakers. Then we've got a decent size for its size, 19.2 watt hours of the Soundcore Boost, followed by the 16.3 of the Tribit Maxsound Plus. I should just point out that is their version 2, their upgraded version. We've gone over the differences between them, but just know the sound is the same between versions 1 and version 2. All SBC codec, all Bluetooth 5, all do stereo pairing, except for, no, why? Oh, how did that happen? The Xsound Mega, what a miss, what a miss, what a miss. All USB-C connections, all got an auxiliary. 3 of these speakers have got an auxiliary, except for, I know it's a champion, but yes, it does miss auxiliary input. The Soundcore Boost, though, can be used as a power bank along with the Xsound Mega. They can all be used as a phone speaker. Only the M4 will let you use an SD card, well, a micro SD card, and play music straight off the device itself. Only the Xsound Mega has lights. This is becoming a real issue after what we've seen, what JBL have been doing with a few of their speakers, and Harman Kardon. It really came to my attention, though, with the Boombox 2, where they're literally showing different specs depending where you look. If you look on the website, Boombox 2, 160 watts. You go into the manual, 80 watts. You go into the spec sheet, it says 2 times 40 watts for the woofers, plus 2 times 40 watts for the tweeters, to add up to 160. Of course, I'm talking about on AC power. They can't all be right, and just bear in mind it comes with a 100-watt charger. And you say, well, now it's peak and all that. Of course, you can produce a lot more in short-term volume because you can use stored power. But if you're talking RMS, it's got to draw it from the mains. So it makes no sense what they're doing. They are really, well, it's just not, can't be true. Not all of those statements can be true when they've called them all RMS. And specifically saying AC power and different on battery power, because then they could argue they're giving you the driver specs. You know, what power can those drivers handle? It might have nothing to do with the amp, but they're not. They're saying, and they're actually saying power output. So it's really bad. So take these with a pinch of salt. None of them even tell you max, peak, RMS, what they're rating. Are they rating the drivers? Are they rating the amp? Are they rating it with into what load? Well, obviously you'd hope they're using the impedance of the actual drivers, but we really don't know. It's so bad. But I will tell you, 40 watts headline for M4, 20 watts for the Soundcore Boost, 30 watts for the Xsound Mega, 24 watts for the Maxsound Plus. But really, it's like the milliamp hour specs on the battery. Absolutely meaningless, and without a load of other specs, not least the sensitivity, if you want to get any idea of how loud they're going and stuff like that. That's why I'm using watt hours for the batteries. That is the only thing that matters, unless you're getting the volts along with the milliamp hours specs. But anyway, I digress. As usual, we talked about the weights. They're all IPX7 rated, which means up to 1 meter of water for 30 minutes. But of course, if they don't float, completely pointless. If indeed you're in water that's more than a meter deep, and you may lose it if it's at the sea or something. So the point being, what is the point? They are all going to float, except for the Maxsound Plus will not float. In terms of the drivers, I think we already mentioned single woofer, mono, woofer, dual passive radiators. We've only got one, usually only one passive radiator on the M4 and 2 woofers. Just remember, passive radiators are sized to the woofers, so it's about surface area. It's not about how many radiators have they got. Maxsound Plus, of course, woofer, and 2 passive radiators. None of them, they're all awful. I'm not going to go into specs. They all have severe Bluetooth latency, and if you don't want to see lip sync issues, you're not going to be able to stream at all. So that's a wrap. You got one option. You got no, you haven't. You got 4 options. You got one option if you want deep bass. It's the Xsound Mega. You got 2 options if it's about size and you want a clear sound. You're going to go for Maxsound Plus. You want a bit more volume. You want a bit more meat on your sound. You're going to go for the Soundcore Boost. There is no reason, I have to say, for me to recommend the M4 anymore. Now that the Xsound Mega has come along and it's at this price level. It wasn't at this price level when I first reviewed it, but it is now. That's why I'm doing this video. I hope you watched it till the end. I hope you watched at least, I think there's 2 ads. There should be 2 ads if I've done this right in the middle of this video. They will help me out. But yes, it's up to you if you just want to skip like most people who, by the way, for all you people who skip, that really obliterates me in the algorithm. I don't know if you know, the more of a video you watch, the more they will rank that video. They think people are just skipping because you've put the information there and it's so concise. They've just got the bit they want and then they go off. You'll get slaughtered for that sort of thing. That's why short videos do really well overall, because you're going to skip less of them. People like me putting out long videos, basically slitting our own throats. That sounds a bit drastic, but it kind of feels that way sometimes. But it's, hey, you're here now. That's all that matters. Thank you for being here right now. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you in another video.
I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Ain't no project wife, got my logic right, cause I'm not your type. I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Sorry, ma, I ain't get it right. I'ma just live my life. I ain't about that. I ain't about that life.